Excuse me, street girl. You're in the wrong section. First class is for actual paying customers, not people looking for a free upgrade. Flight attendant. Melissa Turner's voice cuts through the cabin like broken glass. She waves dismissively at the woman in seat 2A, shooing her away as if dealing with an unwelcome pest. The passenger, a poised black woman in her early 40s, sits frozen in place, briefcase still on her lap. Melissa's hostility hangs in the air, drawing curious glances from other first-class passengers on Meridian Airlines Flight 842. Is there a problem? The woman asks, her voice steady, despite the public humiliation unfolding. Yes, there's a problem, Melissa replies, leaning closer, blonde hair falling forward as she inspects the woman with exaggerated scrutiny. You're sitting in first class. Her emphasis on those last two words carries unmistakable meaning. It's 6:15 p.m., exactly 25 minutes before departure from Boston to San Francisco. The first-class cabin gleams with luxury. Wide leather seats, ambient lighting, crystal glasses waiting to be filled with pre-flight champagne. Everything designed to convey exclusivity, privilege, and comfort. Everything Melissa seems determined to protect from this particular passenger. In seat 3C, Javier Rodriguez lowers his financial magazine eyebrows raised at the confrontation unfolding in front of him. His gaze shifts between the flight attendant's aggressive stance and the passenger's composed demeanor. Dr. Gabrielle Foster takes a measured breath. Despite her calm exterior, her fingers tighten almost imperceptibly around her phone. 20 years as a neurosurgeon has taught her to control her reactions, especially in moments of crisis. And this, though different from an operating room emergency, demands the same discipline. I have a confirmed reservation for this seat, Dr. Foster says, reaching for her boarding pass. 2A. Melissa rolls her eyes, making no attempt to hide her disbelief. Right. And I'm sure you paid the full $400 to $500 for it, too. Her sarcasm drips like poison. The wealthy-looking man across the aisle shifts uncomfortably. Several passengers pretend to be absorbed in their devices, though their attention is clearly focused on the confrontation. Actually, I did, Dr. Foster replies evenly, though her heart hammers against her ribs. Not from fear, but from the familiar exhausting burden of having to prove her legitimacy in spaces where her presence is automatically questioned. Melissa's lips curl into a smile that contains no warmth. We'll see about that. Is this knockoff fooling anyone? Melissa asks loudly, grabbing Dr. Foster's designer clutch without permission. She holds it up mockingly, turning it over as if appraising a counterfeit. Security should probably check if it's stolen. Gasps ripple through the first-class cabin. A woman in 1D whispers to her husband. A businessman in 4B stares openly now, no longer pretending to read. Javier Rodriguez sits forward, coffee forgotten. Excuse me, he begins, but his objection is cut short by the arrival of Victoria Palmer, the lead flight attendant, her silver-streaked bob and starched uniform projecting authority. What seems to be the situation here? Victoria asks, her tone professionally neutral, but her eyes already scanning Dr. Foster with suspicion. This woman claims she has a first-class ticket, Melissa explains, emphasis on claims. I'm just trying to verify. Victoria nods, adopting a veneer of procedural correctness that barely masks her prejudgment. Ma'am, we just need to verify your ticket. This is a $4 $500 seat after all. We have strict protocols. Dr. Foster reaches into her briefcase and produces her boarding pass, maintaining her composure despite the public spectacle being made of her presence. Here's my confirmation. Seat 2A, as I mentioned. Victoria takes the boarding pass, studying it with exaggerated care. She passes it to Melissa, who examines it like a detective with evidence. This could be photoshopped, Melissa announces loudly. Corporate fraud is serious business. We've had cases like this before. Dr. Foster's phone buzzes in her hand. A message appears on the screen. Urgent board meeting moved to 9:00 p.m. Horizon Medical Technologies acquisition vote requires your presence. The irony isn't lost on her, being accused of fraud and theft while simultaneously being needed for a multi-million-dollar corporate acquisition. She opens her camera app, angling it to document the confrontation. "Ma'am, no recording." Melissa snaps, lunging forward to block the camera. "That's against airline policy. Please show me that policy in writing," Dr. Foster requests calmly. "I'm documenting this interaction for my protection." Other passengers have begun recording as well, phones held discreetly or openly capturing the escalating situation. A young white woman in row 5, Emma Whitaker, has started a live stream, her whispered commentary providing context. "Watching clear discrimination happening in first class right now." Victoria steps closer, her voice lowering to a threat wrapped in professionalism. "If you continue to be difficult, we'll have to involve security." Difficult. Dr. Foster echoes, still maintaining her composure. "I'm sitting in my assigned seat showing you my confirmed reservation and responding calmly to accusations of fraud and theft. Which part of that strikes you as difficult?" Victoria's lips thin with displeasure at being questioned. "Your attitude is becoming problematic." From behind them, a new voice joins the conversation. "Her attitude seems perfectly reasonable to me given the circumstances." Javier Rodriguez has stood up, his tall frame impossible to ignore. "I've been watching this entire interaction and I don't see how you can justify this treatment." Melissa flushes with anger. "Sir, please stay out of this. It doesn't concern you." "Discrimination concerns everyone," he replies steadily. The word hangs in the air. Discrimination, giving name to what everyone can see but what the flight attendants are carefully avoiding stating explicitly. Victoria turns to address him, her voice dropping to a hiss. "No one is discriminating. We're following procedure." "Interesting," Javier responds. "I've flown first class on Meridian over 30 times this year, and I've never once been asked to verify that my ticket is legitimate or that my belongings aren't stolen. I am Dr. Gabrielle Foster." She finally introduces herself, her voice low but clear enough to be heard by nearby passengers. "And I'd like to know if every passenger in first class is being subjected to this same level of scrutiny, or if there's something specific about me that has triggered such concern." Victoria's face tightens at the direct challenge. "Dr. Foster, we're simply following protocol. A protocol that apparently only applies to certain passengers." Dr. Foster observes, her gaze steady. Emma Whitaker's live stream count ticks upward, now at 230 viewers and climbing rapidly. Comments flood in. "This is outrageous. Call a lawyer. Name and shame the airline." Victoria shifts strategies, adopting a conciliatory tone that doesn't reach her eyes. "Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding. We could rebook you on the next flight with a first-class upgrade." "Upgrade me," Dr. Foster repeats, her voice revealing the first hint of controlled anger. "To the seat I've already purchased." The sound of heavy footsteps draws attention to the front of the cabin where 2 airport security officers board the plane. Officer Daniel Brooks, a broad-shouldered white man in his late 30s, and Officer Luis Morales, a trim Hispanic man with a carefully neutral expression. Behind them follows Heather Thompson, the gate manager, her face already set in damage control mode as she takes in the scene, and more importantly, the recording phones directed at the confrontation. "What seems to be the problem here?" Officer Brooks asks, automatically positioning himself closer to Dr. Foster than to the flight attendants. "This passenger is being non-compliant," Victoria states before Dr. Foster can speak. She became aggressive when questioned about her ticket validity. Aggressive, Dr. Foster asks, still seated, hands folded calmly in her lap. "I'd be interested to hear examples of this alleged aggression." Officer Morales glances around the cabin, noting the phones recording the interaction. His posture shifts subtly away from confrontation mode. "She refused to provide proper identification," Melissa adds quickly, "and she started recording without permission." "Is that correct, ma'am?" Officer Brooks asks Dr. Foster. "No," she replies simply. "I presented my boarding pass immediately when asked. I began recording only after being accused of fraud and theft and after my personal property was grabbed without permission. Javier Rodriguez steps forward again. I can confirm that. The passenger has been completely calm while being subjected to baseless accusations. Dr. Foster's phone buzzes again. A message from her assistant Global News picked up live stream. Legal standing by. Heather Thompson steps forward, clearly recognizing the potential for disaster. Dr. Foster. I apologize for any misunderstanding. If you could step off the aircraft momentarily, we can sort this out without delaying departure. There is no misunderstanding, Dr. Foster states firmly. I have a confirmed reservation for this seat which I have shown. I have done nothing to warrant being removed from this flight. Ma'am Heather begins. Dr. Foster, she corrects gently but firmly. Dr. Foster Heather amends, we need to resolve this situation quickly. I agree completely. Dr. Foster responds. The quickest resolution would be for your staff to cease their unfounded accusations and allow the flight to proceed as scheduled. Officer Brooks shifts his weight, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Ma'am, Dr. Foster, if airline staff are requesting you to deplane, you are legally required to comply. On what grounds? Dr. Foster asks, her voice still calm but insistent. Disruptive behavior. Victoria supplies immediately. What specifically have I disrupted? Dr. Foster challenges. I'm sitting quietly in my assigned seat. The confrontation has reached an impasse. Passengers throughout the cabin are watching intently. Emma Whitaker's live stream has now reached over 1,000 viewers with comments pouring in by the second. In a last, desperate attempt, Melissa mutters just loudly enough to be heard. She's probably using stolen credit cards. The cabin falls silent. Even Victoria looks shocked at her colleague's blatant statement. Dr. Foster's eyes lock onto Melissa's. Stolen credit cards, she repeats evenly, because a black woman couldn't possibly afford first class legitimately. Is that your implication? Ms. Turner? Melissa's face flushes red. I didn't mean... You didn't have to clarify. Dr. Foster interrupts quietly. Your meaning was perfectly clear. Dr. Foster stands slowly, her full height and presence commanding attention. Despite the pressure of the moment, her voice remains measured, dignified. If you insist on removing me from this aircraft, she states clearly, then you will be removing the new controlling owner of Meridian Airlines. A beat of silence follows, then scattered nervous laughter from those who assume she must be joking. Right. Melissa scoffs, though uncertainty flickers across her face. Dr. Foster retrieves her phone and dials a number, her eyes never leaving Melissa's face. Thomas, it's Gabrielle. The Meridian acquisition closed 5 minutes ago. Please patch me through to CEO Reynolds immediately. Heather Thompson's radio crackles to life. Gate 23 operations here. Be advised we're tracking unusual corporate activity regarding Meridian. Stand by for further instructions. The atmosphere in the cabin shifts dramatically as passengers realize they might be witnessing something extraordinary. Emma Whitaker's live stream viewer count jumps to 3,500 as she whispers excitedly into her phone. Oh my God, I think she actually owns the airline. Melissa's face drains of color. Victoria takes an instinctive step backward. Officer Brooks and Officer Morales exchange a look of growing comprehension. Who are you calling? Victoria demands, her authoritative tone now brittle with anxiety. Doctor. Foster lowers the phone slightly. Someone who's about to change your career trajectory significantly, she replies, the calm in her voice more intimidating than any shouted threat could be. Her phone connects, and she activates the speaker. Dr. Foster. A male voice answers urgently. This is Alexander Reynolds. I understand there's been an incident aboard one of our aircraft. Yes, Alexander. Dr. Foster confirms. I'm currently on Flight 842, where I've been accused of fraud, theft, and using stolen credit cards by your flight attendants who have attempted to remove me from a first-class seat I legitimately purchased. My God, Reynolds responds, shock evident even through the phone connection. This is completely unacceptable. I assure you I don't need assurances. Dr. Foster interrupts smoothly. I need immediate action. I want this crew suspended pending a full investigation effective immediately. Of course, Dr. Foster Reynolds replies without hesitation. We'll arrange for replacement crew right away. Please accept my profound apologies for this inexcusable situation. Heather Thompson's radio crackles again. Gate 23, implement immediate crew change for Flight 842. Priority Level 1. Repeat immediate crew change, Priority Level 1. The power dynamic has completely reversed. Melissa stands frozen, her earlier arrogance replaced by dawning horror. Victoria looks ashen, already calculating the damage to her career. The watching passengers stare in various states of shock, vindication, and disbelief. Officer Brooks clears his throat. Ms. Thompson, we'll stand down unless you need further assistance. No, Heather responds faintly, her eyes fixed on Dr. Foster with new understanding. That won't be necessary. Dr. Foster returns to her seat, arranging herself with the same dignity she's maintained throughout the confrontation. I believe we're delaying departure, she observes mildly. Perhaps your replacement crew can get us back on schedule. As Melissa, Victoria, and Heather retreat in stunned silence, whispers ripple through the cabin. Javier Rodriguez catches Dr. Foster's eye and offers a respectful nod. Emma Whitaker's livestream comments explode with reactions. Queen Power, move justice in real time. Dr. Foster gazes out the window, allowing herself a single deep breath. This moment of vindication doesn't feel like triumph. It feels like the beginning of something much more important. Dr. Foster. I want to personally assure you that those responsible will face appropriate consequences. Alexander Reynolds' voice comes through the phone with the urgent tone of a man watching a corporate crisis unfold in real time. The first-class cabin has fallen into a hushed silence, passengers pretending not to listen while absorbing every word. The confrontation has transformed into something else entirely, a revelation of power previously hidden. Alexander Doctor. Foster replies, her voice carrying effortlessly in the quiet cabin. Appropriate consequences aren't enough. This incident reflects a culture, not isolated behavior. Through the aircraft windows, movement catches her eye. A new flight crew approaching rapidly across the tarmac, their pace communicating the urgency that has rippled through Meridian's operations. I completely understand, Reynolds responds. What actions would you like to see immediately? Full suspension of all involved staff with pay, Dr. Foster specifies. This isn't about punishment yet. It's about proper investigation. I want comprehensive documentation of all passenger complaints regarding discriminatory treatment for the past 5 years. And I expect a preliminary report on my desk by morning. Consider it done. Reynolds confirms the resignation in his voice, making it clear he recognizes the landscape has fundamentally shifted as Dr. Foster ends the call. Her mind drifts involuntarily to a memory from 30 years ago. 12-year-old Gabrielle standing proudly next to her science project at the Regional Innovation Fair. The project that had won first place, a neural response simulator that judges had called graduate-level work. The project that had earned her special recognition and an invitation to the VIP reception area. The memory sharpens a staff member's hand on her shoulder, steering her firmly toward the exit. This area is for special guests. Only, the woman had said, not unkindly but with absolute certainty. The regular viewing area is down the hall. But, I'm supposed to be here, young, Gabrielle had protested, showing her winner's badge. Dr. Myers invited me personally. The woman's smile had been patronizing. Honey, I'm sure you misunderstood. This reception is for project winners and their sponsors. I am a winner, Gabrielle had insisted, her voice growing smaller as adults turned to stare. It was her grandmother who had found her sitting alone in the hallway, fighting back tears of humiliation and injustice. Baby girl, Why aren't you at the reception?" Her grandmother had asked, elegant even in her inexpensive dress dignity in every line of her bearing. When Gabrielle explained, her grandmother's eyes had hardened, though her voice remained gentle. "Listen to me," she'd said, kneeling to meet her granddaughter's gaze. "Don't fight for a seat at their table. One day you'll own the whole restaurant." The memory fades as the aircraft door opens again. A new lead flight attendant enters, professional, composed, and visibly concerned. Behind her, the replacement crew files in their expressions, revealing they've been briefed on the situation. Heather Thompson approaches Dr. Foster one last time, her demeanor transformed. "Dr. Foster, on behalf of Meridian Airlines, I want to express our deepest apologies for the inexcusable treatment you received. The crew has been replaced and we should be ready for departure in approximately 15 minutes. "Thank you, Ms. Thompson," Dr. Foster replies evenly. Officer Brooks, who had lingered during the crew change, approaches with noticeably different body language. "Dr. Foster, we apologize for our role in this situation. If you'd like to file a formal complaint about your treatment, we can take your statement. That won't be necessary." "Officer Brooks," she responds, "I have more direct channels for addressing this matter now." As the officials retreat and the new crew begins preparation for departure, Javier Rodriguez leans slightly toward Dr. Foster. "That was the most dignified handling of blatant discrimination I've ever witnessed," he says quietly. "Thank you," she replies simply. "No, thank you," he insists. "What they did was inexcusable." "Yes," she agrees. "And tomorrow I begin making sure it never happens again." The aircraft reaches cruising altitude, the gentle hum of engines providing a backdrop for the murmured conversations throughout the cabin. The new crew is impeccably professional, their service attentive without a trace of the previous hostility. Dr. Foster opens her laptop, reviewing notes for the emergency board meeting that awaits her in San Francisco, but her mind keeps returning to the path that led her to this moment. Harvard Medical School 20 years ago. Standing outside Professor Winter's office, overhearing his conversation with a colleague, Foster has the highest scores I've seen in a decade. But you know how it is. Affirmative action cases don't always translate to surgical talent. The words had burned, but she'd channeled that burn into fuel. Graduated top of her class. Completed her residency at Johns Hopkins with unprecedented evaluation scores. Became the youngest neurosurgeon ever granted privileges at Boston Memorial, and still the moments accumulated. Patients requesting the real doctor when she entered rooms. Nurses double-checking her orders with unnecessary frequency. Security stopping her in hospital hallways after hours demanding identification despite her white coat and credentials. Each incident was explained away. Each complaint met with platitudes about misunderstandings and suggestions that she might be oversensitive. Each time she documented, persisted, excelled, and planned. Horizon Medical Technologies had begun as a side project, developing neural interface devices for patients with mobility challenges. 5 years of working nights and weekends beyond her surgical schedule. Patent applications submitted during rare vacation days. Refinements tested during pro bono surgeries in underserved communities. When the breakthrough came, a neural interface that allowed unprecedented precision in movement control, the medical technology world took notice. Within 3 years, Horizon had grown from a promising startup to a dominant force in medical technology innovation. Yet even as CEO of a billion-dollar company, she still encountered the assumptions, the questioning, the subtle and not-so-subtle signals that she didn't belong in certain spaces. Her father's voice interrupts these reflections, not physically present but preserved in memory so vivid it might as well be. James Foster, who had worked as a baggage handler for Meridian Airlines for 30 years, who had never missed a day, never been promoted above shift supervisor despite his intelligence and dedication. "It's just how things are, Gabby," he'd told her during her medical school years when she'd pushed him to fight for the management position he deserved. "Some doors aren't meant for people like us to walk through." She remembers his pride when she graduated medical school, his amazement when Horizon secured its first major funding round, and then the last conversation they'd had before cancer took him the previous year. Dad. "You should let me book you a first-class ticket to come visit," she'd suggested during a video call, noticing how thin he'd become. "You deserve some comfort." He'd laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Baby girl in 30 years handling luggage for that airline. You know how many times I flew on their planes?" 3. And every single time, even in economy, they made me feel like I was stealing something that wasn't meant for me. His expression had grown serious then. The way they look at you like you're in the wrong place. It wears on your soul after a while. Makes you start believing maybe they're right. She'd made a promise to herself then as she watched her brilliant, hard-working father diminished by decades of subtle exclusion. Someday, she would create a space where dignity wasn't allocated based on appearance, where belonging wasn't something that had to be proven repeatedly. The acquisition of Meridian Airlines wasn't a spontaneous decision. It had been planned, methodically researched thoroughly, and executed with the precision she brought to both surgery and business. Not for profit, though the company had significant turnaround potential. Not for status, though ownership of a major airline certainly represented a kind of power. She had acquired Meridian because her father deserved better, because every person who had ever been made to feel they didn't belong deserved better. Dr. Foster. The voice of the new lead flight attendant breaks through her thoughts. "Would you care for a beverage before dinner service begins?" Water would be fine. "Thank you," she responds, noting the difference in tone, the absence of suspicion or condescension. As the attendant moves away, Dr. Foster makes a note on her tablet. Identify procedural changes needed to ensure consistent treatment of all passengers. This was just the beginning. "Excuse me, Dr. Foster." A distinguished older gentleman approaches her seat during a quiet moment in the flight. "I'm Professor Adam Taylor from Harvard Law. I couldn't help witnessing what happened before takeoff, and I wanted to offer my services as a witness if you need one." Dr. Foster looks up, assessing him briefly before responding. "Thank you, Professor Taylor. That's very kind." "Not kindness," he clarifies, his expression serious. "Necessity. What I observed was textbook discriminatory treatment. It should be documented properly." She nods. "I appreciate that. If you could email your contact information to my assistant, that would be helpful." She passes him a business card with her assistant's details. As Professor Taylor returns to his seat, a Hispanic woman in her early 30s approaches hesitantly. "Dr. Foster, I'm Elena Delgado. I just wanted to say..." She pauses, seeming to gather courage. "The same thing happened to me last month on a Meridian flight. Not as extreme, but similar, questioning similar assumptions. I didn't have the courage to stand up like you did. It shouldn't require courage to be treated with basic dignity." Ms. Delgado, Dr. Foster replies gently. "No, it shouldn't." Elena agrees. "But I'm glad someone with power is finally seeing it firsthand." Throughout the flight, more passengers find reasons to pass by her seat, offering quiet words of support or sharing similar experiences. What strikes Dr. Foster is the diversity of these stories, not just from people of color, but from younger travelers, people dressed casually, anyone who somehow didn't fit the perceived first-class passenger profile. During a quiet moment when most passengers are watching movies or napping, a young flight attendant approaches her movements, suggesting she doesn't want to draw attention. "Dr. Foster," she says softly. "I'm Sophie Bennett. I'm new with Meridian, only 6 months in. I just wanted you to know." She glances around, lowering her voice further. What Melissa and Victoria did, that's not unusual. Dr. Foster regards her carefully. "Go on. During training, we were taught to watch for passengers of concern in premium cabins." Sophie continues, her discomfort evident. They never explicitly mentioned race or age, but the examples they used, the photos in the training materials. It was clear what they meant. Do you have access to these materials? Dr. Foster asks. Sophie nods. Everything's in our training portal, but that's not all. We have metrics for premium cabin integrity. Basically, how many people we identify as not belonging in first class. Some senior attendants brag about their numbers. Thank you for telling me this, Ms. Bennett, Dr. Foster says. That's extremely valuable information. I almost quit last month, Sophie admits. I became a flight attendant to help people, not to make them feel unwelcome. But maybe, she hesitates, maybe I can do more good by staying and helping change things. Sometimes the most effective change comes from within. Dr. Foster agrees. Would you be willing to document what you've observed? With full protection, of course. Yes, Sophie says without hesitation. It's time someone did something. As Sophie returns to her duties, Dr. Foster makes another note on her tablet, adding review all training materials and investigate performance metrics to her growing list of action items. Her phone buzzes with a message from Jennifer Williams, her executive assistant legal team standing by. Social media response overwhelming. Hahat flying while black trending nationally. CNN, MSNBC requesting statements. Another message follows immediately. Thomas has secured preliminary data on passenger complaints for the past year. Pattern of discriminatory incidents clearly established. Documentation ready for your review upon landing. Dr. Foster isn't surprised. She had suspected what the data would show. What does surprise her is the speed with which this single incident has captured public attention. Emma Whitaker's live stream has now been viewed over 200,000 times and shared by several major news outlets. The power of visibility, the impact of witnessing. These would be essential components of the transformation she intends to implement. Gabrielle, the media pressure is mounting. Jennifer Williams's voice comes through Dr. Foster's earbuds as she reviews documents on her tablet. CNN is running the story at the top of the hour. Social media engagement has tripled in the last 40 minutes. What's the angle they're taking? Dr. Foster asks, keeping her voice low to avoid being overheard. Mostly supportive of you, Jennifer reports. The initial footage makes it impossible to spin this any other way. Reynolds has issued a standard corporate apology, but it's being criticized as inadequate. As it should be. Dr. Foster agrees. Standard responses won't address non-standard problems. Thomas is sending you some troubling data, Jennifer continues. The preliminary review of complaint records shows a pattern that can't be coincidental. Complaints about discriminatory treatment are filed at nearly triple the rate by passengers of color, but they're resolved at only half the rate of other complaints. Not surprising, but now we have evidence, Dr. Foster notes. What about internal policies? That's where it gets interesting, Jennifer says, her tone shifting. There's an unofficial metric called premium cabin integrity that flight attendants are evaluated on. Essentially, they're rewarded for identifying passengers they believe don't belong in first class or business class, and either upgrading their verification procedures or finding reasons to deny service. Officially sanctioned profiling, Dr. Foster summarizes. Exactly. And while the policy language never explicitly mentions race, age, or appearance, the implementation data tells a different story. Thomas is compiling examples now. Dr. Foster processes this information, connecting it to Sophie Bennett's earlier revelations. Jennifer, I need you to do something immediately. Contact Professor Adam Taylor. He's on this flight and offered to be a witness. He's a Harvard law professor. See if he'd be willing to help us structure an independent review process for these practices. On it, Jennifer confirms. Also, Richard Montgomery called. He says the legal framework for your proposed changes is ready to present to the board. Good. And the meeting logistics. Set for 9:15 p.m. at the Horizon offices. Transportation will be waiting when you land. The board members have been notified of an emergency session. Most are already en route. Dr. Foster checks the flight information display 2 hours until landing. Send me Montgomery's preliminary legal framework. I want to review it before landing. Already in your secure folder. One more thing, Gabrielle. Thomas mentioned that several former Meridian employees have reached out since the video went viral. They're offering to share their experiences with discriminatory practices they were expected to enforce. Have them sign NDAs and schedule interviews starting tomorrow morning, Dr. Foster instructs. This is exactly the kind of documentation we need. As she ends the call, Dr. Foster notices Alexander Reynolds is calling again. She answers, keeping her voice professional and measured. Dr. Foster, I've just received the preliminary incident report. Reynolds begins his tone carefully controlled. I want to assure you that this behavior is completely contrary to Meridian's values. And, Alexander, she interrupts gently, we both know that's not true. A pause. I'm sorry. The behavior I experienced isn't contrary to Meridian's values. It's a direct expression of them, she explains. Your premium cabin integrity metrics actively encourage staff to identify passengers who don't look right for premium service. Your complaint resolution process systematically dismisses reports of discriminatory treatment. Your training materials implicitly reinforce biases about who belongs in which spaces. Another longer pause. Dr. Foster, I think there may be some misunderstanding about... There's no misunderstanding, she states firmly. I have the data, Alexander. I have testimony from current and former staff. I have statistical evidence showing patterns that cannot be explained by chance. What I experienced today wasn't an anomaly. It was your company's culture functioning exactly as designed. These are serious accusations. Reynolds responds, his voice noticeably cooler. They are, she agrees, and addressing them will require serious changes. I'll present my initial recommendations to the board tonight. I suggest you prepare them for significant operational adjustments. After ending the call, Dr. Foster returns to reviewing the legal framework that Richard Montgomery has prepared. The document outlines a comprehensive approach to restructuring Meridian's policies, training, and accountability systems. Her phone buzzes with another message from Jennifer's social media update. #Justice for Dar Foster trending. Major civil rights organizations releasing statements of support. Celebrity retweets amplifying reach. Estimated media impact already exceeding $3 million in equivalent advertising value. The public response doesn't surprise her. People recognize injustice when they see it unfiltered. What matters now is channeling that response into meaningful, lasting change. She opens another document, the draft framework for what she's tentatively calling the Sky Equity Initiative. Not just a retraining program or policy adjustment, but a fundamental reimagining of how service, respect, and dignity operate in commercial aviation. As the plane begins its initial descent into San Francisco, Dr. Foster finalizes her notes for the board meeting. This confrontation wasn't what she would have chosen, but now that it's happened, she intends to use it as a catalyst for transformation. Dr. Foster, the car is waiting to take you directly to Horizon headquarters. Jennifer Williams meets Dr. Foster at the gate, tablet in hand and already updating her on developments. The board is assembled. Legal is prepared. Media requests continue to multiply. Dr. Foster nods, maintaining her composed demeanor despite the fatigue of the flight and the emotional toll of the confrontation. Any word from Richard Montgomery? He's already at Horizon, reviewing final documentation with Thomas. Jennifer confirms. And there's something else. Melissa Turner has given an interview to a local Boston news station. Dr. Foster raises an eyebrow. That was fast. What's her angle? Denial deflection claims she was just following protocol. Jennifer summarizes as they walk briskly through the terminal. It's not playing well. The unedited footage from multiple angles makes her position untenable. They reach the waiting car, sliding into the privacy of the back seat before continuing their conversation. Victoria Palmer hasn't made any public statements yet, Jennifer adds. But sources say she's been in contact with an employment attorney. Predictable, Dr. Foster notes. What's the current social media temperature? Jennifer consults her tablet. Still heavily in your favor. The initial shock and outrage have evolved into calls for structural change. Civil rights organizations are citing this as a textbook example of everyday discrimination. Dr. Foster gazes out the window as San Francisco's lights glide past. We need to move quickly, but methodically. This can't be just about punishing individuals. It has to address the underlying issues. Richard has developed 3 potential approaches, Jennifer says. Different levels of intervention depending on how much resistance we encounter from the existing management team. Dr. Foster's phone rings. Alexander Reynolds again. She answers on speaker so Jennifer can hear. Dr. Foster Reynolds begins immediately. I've been reviewing some of the materials you mentioned, and I think there may be room for a productive conversation about policy adjustments and sensitivity training that would. Alexander Dr. Foster interrupts. Gently, this situation requires more than adjustments and training. The issues are structural and cultural. They require comprehensive reform. With all due respect, Dr. Foster Reynolds counters, his tone carefully measured. You've been involved with Meridian for less than 24 hours. I've led this company for 8 years. I believe I have some insight into what's practical and what's not. Your experience is valuable, she acknowledges, and I hope you'll bring that perspective to implementing the necessary changes. But the decision to proceed with comprehensive reform isn't up for negotiation. A pause. Perhaps we should continue this discussion in person. I agree. I'll see you at the board meeting in 30 minutes. As she ends the call, Jennifer gives her a knowing look. He's going to resist. Of course he is. Dr. Foster agrees. Change is uncomfortable, especially when it challenges long-held assumptions. But resistance doesn't mean we adjust our goals. It means we refine our strategies. The car pulls up to the Horizon Medical Technologies headquarters, a sleek glass and steel structure in downtown San Francisco. Security escorts them directly to the executive elevator. Jennifer Dr. Foster says as they ascend, I want to be clear about something. This isn't about revenge. Jennifer studies her boss carefully. I know that. Make sure everyone else knows it too. Dr. Foster emphasizes, what happened to me today happens to countless people every day, most of whom don't have the power to effect change. The goal isn't punishment. It's transformation. Understood, Jennifer affirms. Though I wouldn't mind seeing Melissa Turner learn a serious lesson. A small smile touches Dr. Foster's lips. Oh, she will. Just not in the way she might expect. They exit the elevator on the top floor where Richard Montgomery awaits them. Tall, distinguished, with silver hair and the calm demeanor of someone who has navigated countless corporate battles, he greets Dr. Foster with respectful efficiency. The documentation is compelling, he informs her without preamble. Statistical evidence of disparate treatment internal metrics that effectively incentivize discrimination training materials that reinforce problematic assumptions. We have more than enough to justify sweeping changes. And legally, she inquires as they walk toward the boardroom. On solid ground, he assures her, the acquisition gives you controlling interest. The board can't block structural reforms without exposing themselves to liability given what we now know about existing practices. They pause outside the boardroom doors. Inside, the board of Meridian Airlines waits. Executives who have overseen a system that turned discrimination into policy, however disguised. Ready? Richard asks. Dr. Foster takes a measured breath, the same centering technique she uses before complex surgeries. Yes, it's time to begin the healing process. Gentlemen, ladies, I understand this emergency meeting comes at an inconvenient hour. Alexander Reynolds stands at the head of the polished boardroom table attempting to project calm authority despite the tension evident in his posture. As you're all aware, an incident occurred today aboard one of our flights that has garnered significant media attention. The 12 board members of Meridian Airlines shift uncomfortably. Screens embedded in the wall display muted news coverage of the confrontation, social media analytics showing the viral spread of the video and preliminary damage assessments for the company's reputation. Cynthia Blackwell, VP of Operations, leans forward, her voice taut with controlled panic. Alex, the hashtags are still trending. We've got civil rights organizations issuing statements, celebrity influencers amplifying the story. This is approaching crisis level. Michael Peterson, Chief of Staff, nods in agreement. Our immediate response hasn't gained traction. Standard apology language is being criticized as inadequate and performative. Reynolds clears his throat. I've spoken directly with Dr. Foster, who has assumed controlling interest in Meridian following today's acquisition closure. She's expressed concerns about our policies and procedures, which we're prepared to review thoroughly. Amanda Wilson, Director of Flight Services and direct supervisor to the flight attendants involved in the incident, interjects with barely contained defensiveness. Our procedures are industry standard. If they were implemented overzealously in this instance, that's an individual performance issue, not a policy problem. Exactly, agrees board member Harold Jenkins. This is clearly a case of two employees exercising poor judgment. We terminate, we apologize, we implement a day of sensitivity training, and we move on. The boardroom door opens and conversation ceases abruptly as Dr. Gabrielle Foster enters, followed by Richard Montgomery and Jennifer Williams. Dr. Foster's presence immediately commands attention, her calm dignity a stark contrast to the nervous energy permeating the room. Good evening, she greets them, taking a seat at the opposite end of the table from Reynolds. Thank you for convening on short notice. Reynolds attempts to reclaim control of the meeting. Dr. Foster, we were just discussing our response to today's unfortunate incident. I want to assure you that the behavior you experienced is completely contrary to Meridian's values and, let's begin with accuracy. Dr. Foster interrupts gently. The behavior I experienced is entirely consistent with Meridian's operational practices, if not its stated values. She nods to Jennifer, who distributes tablets to each board member. What you're receiving is a preliminary analysis of passenger complaint data for the past 3 years, internal performance metrics for flight staff, and training materials currently in use. I don't understand, Amanda Wilson protests. What does this have to do with the isolated incident that occurred today? It wasn't isolated. Dr. Foster responds evenly. Page 3 of your document shows complaint statistics broken down by passenger demographics. Complaints about discriminatory treatment are filed at 3 times the rate by passengers of color, yet they're resolved at only half the rate of other complaints. Board members begin scrolling through the data expressions, shifting from skepticism to concern. Page 5 details the premium cabin integrity metrics used to evaluate flight attendants. Dr. Foster continues. Staff are effectively incentivized to identify passengers they believe don't belong in premium cabins and subject them to additional scrutiny or find reasons to deny service. Amanda Wilson's face flushes. That metric measures fraud prevention, not page 6 contains excerpts from your own training presentations. Dr. Foster interrupts, her tone remaining measured. Note the examples used to illustrate passengers of concern. The visual coding is unmistakable, even if the accompanying language avoids explicit reference to race, age, or appearance. Reynolds attempts to regain control. Dr. Foster, while these materials certainly warrant review, I think it's premature to draw sweeping conclusions about "I'm not finished," she states quietly but firmly. Page 8 contains testimony from current and former Meridian employees about unofficial directives they received regarding passenger profiling. Page 9 shows statistical analysis demonstrating that these practices have been implemented with remarkable consistency across your entire operation. The room falls silent as board members continue reviewing the documentation, the implications becoming impossible to ignore. What exactly are you proposing? Reynolds finally asks, his earlier confidence notably diminished. Dr. Foster nods to Richard Montgomery, who stands to address the board. As controlling shareholder following today's acquisition, Dr. Foster is implementing a comprehensive reform initiative, Montgomery explains. This will include a complete revision of training materials and operational metrics, independent review of all passenger complaints over the past 5 years, and restructuring of management in key departments. This is extreme protests, Harold Jenkins. You can't overhaul an entire airline because of one incident. It wasn't one incident, Dr. Foster corrects him. It was the visible manifestation of a pattern that has existed for years. A pattern that you, as board members, either approved or overlooked. She stands, commanding the room's attention. I acquired Meridian Airlines with the intention of implementing these changes regardless of personal experience. Today simply accelerated the timeline. And if we oppose these measures, Amanda Wilson challenges. Richard Montgomery answers smoothly. Given the evidence of discriminatory practices now documented, opposition could expose board members to personal liability. Additionally, Dr. Gabrielle Foster's controlling interest gives her the authority to replace board members who obstruct necessary reforms. The threat delivered in Montgomery's calm, professional tone lands heavily in the room. Board members exchange glances, reassessing their positions. Cynthia Blackwell, who has been silent throughout the exchange, finally speaks. What's your timeline for these changes? Implementation begins immediately, Dr. Foster responds. I've already assembled a transition team to oversee the process. You'll each receive comprehensive briefings by tomorrow afternoon outlining your roles in the reform initiative. And the employees directly involved in today's incident, Reynolds inquires. They'll be suspended with pay pending review, Dr. Foster states. This isn't about punishing individuals. It's about correcting a flawed system that encouraged their behavior. She surveys the room, meeting each board member's gaze directly. I understand this is uncomfortable. Change often is. Often. But I'm not interested in cosmetic adjustments or performative gestures. Meridian Airlines will become an example of equitable treatment and genuine respect for all passengers, not because it makes for good publicity, but because it's the right thing to do. As the gravity of the situation settles over the board, Dr. Foster concludes with quiet authority. The choice before you isn't whether these changes will happen, but whether you'll be part of implementing them or be replaced by those who will. The initial phase begins tomorrow morning. Dr. Foster's voice carries clearly through the phone as she walks through her hotel suite, preparing for the few hours of rest she'll manage before the real work begins. Thomas, I need you to oversee the documentation team. Every policy, every training manual, every performance metric needs to be thoroughly reviewed. Already assembling the team, Thomas Hernandez confirms his efficient tone reflecting years as her trusted second-in-command at Horizon. We've secured office space at Meridian headquarters. Legal has prepared the necessary access authorizations. What's the resistance forecast, she asks, slipping off her shoes and settling onto the sofa with her tablet. Mixed, Thomas reports. Reynolds is calculating his options, but he's pragmatic enough to recognize the inevitable. Wilson will be oppositional. The problematic practices originated primarily in her department. The remaining executives are waiting to see which way the wind blows. And operational stability, Jennifer has coordinated with Meridian's scheduling department to ensure no service disruptions during the transition. Passengers won't see any immediate changes except perhaps more cautious behavior from customer-facing staff. Dr. Foster nods to herself. What about the Sky Equity Framework? Is it ready to present? Finalized an hour ago, Thomas confirms. Comprehensive reform in 3 phases: immediate policy changes, staff retraining, and long-term structural adjustments. The independent review board is being assembled. Professor Taylor has agreed to serve as external oversight chair. Good. Schedule a company-wide announcement for tomorrow afternoon. I want every Meridian employee to understand exactly what's happening and why. And the media strategy, Dr. Foster considers this carefully. Transparency without spectacle. We acknowledge the incident that precipitated immediate action, but we emphasize that the reforms address long-standing issues. This isn't about one flight or one passenger. It's about fundamental fairness in how people are treated. Understood. One more thing. Sophie Bennett, the flight attendant who provided internal information, has formally requested to join the reform implementation team. She's young, but passionate about making real change. Approve it, Dr. Foster decides. We need voices from within the organization, especially those who recognized the problems but felt powerless to address them. As she ends the call, Dr. Foster opens the Sky Equity Framework document, reviewing the vision statement one more time. Meridian Airlines commits to creating an environment where every passenger is treated with equal dignity and respect, where service quality is determined by what we provide rather than who we serve, and where our success is measured not just by financial metrics, but by the consistent fairness of our passenger experience. The words resonate with her deeply, not just as corporate language, but as a genuine articulation of the changes she intends to implement. Changes that would have meaningful impact for countless travelers who had experienced what she experienced today, but without the power to demand better. Her phone rings again, an unknown number. She considers letting it go to voicemail given the late hour, but something compels her to answer. Dr. Foster speaking. Dr. Foster, this is Melissa Turner. The voice sounds smaller than it had on the aircraft, stripped of its earlier arrogance. I hope it's not inappropriate for me to call you directly. Dr. Foster sits up straighter, surprised by the contact. How did you get this number, Ms. Turner? Sophie Bennett gave it to me, Melissa admits. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from right now. What can I do for you, Ms. Turner? Dr. Foster asks neutrally. A pause. Then I wanted to apologize. Not because I have to, or because it might save my job, but because I was wrong. Watching that video of myself seeing how I treated you, I didn't recognize the person I've become. Dr. Foster listens, neither interrupting nor offering immediate absolution. The things I said, the assumptions I made, Melissa continues, her voice unsteady. There's no excuse. But there is an explanation, not that it justifies anything. We work in a system that rewards us for protecting first class from people who don't fit a certain profile. We're trained to be suspicious, to question, to exclude, and over time it becomes automatic. Systems shape behavior, Dr. Foster acknowledges, but individuals still make choices within those systems. I know Melissa agrees quietly. That's why I'm calling. Whatever happens with my job, whether I'm terminated or not, I need you to know that you've forced me to see something in myself that I didn't want to acknowledge, and I'm grateful for that, even though it's painful. Dr. Foster considers her response carefully. Ms. Turner, I appreciate your call. Self-reflection is the beginning of growth, but meaningful change requires more than recognition. It requires commitment to doing better. I want that chance, Melissa says with unexpected intensity. Not just to keep my job, but to be part of fixing what's broken. I understand the system now in a way I didn't before, and I think I could help change it from within. An interesting proposition, Dr. Foster observes. Why should I consider it? Because reformed offenders make the most convincing advocates, Melissa suggests. And because I have 8 years of experience seeing how discrimination operates in aviation from the inside. I know where the problems are hidden. Dr. Foster doesn't respond immediately, weighing the sincerity and potential value of this unexpected offer. I'm not asking for an answer tonight, Melissa adds hastily. Just, please consider it. Sometimes people who've been part of the problem have unique insights into creating solutions. After ending the call, Dr. Foster makes a note to discuss this development with Thomas and Jennifer. Melissa Turner's proposal is unexpected but potentially valuable, especially if her transformation is genuine. She returns to reviewing the implementation timeline for the Sky Equity Initiative, making adjustments based on the day's developments. Phase 1 would focus on immediate policy changes, eliminating the problematic premium cabin integrity metrics, revising verification procedures to ensure consistent application, implementing anonymous reporting systems for passengers who experience discriminatory treatment. Phase 2 would address staff training and culture comprehensive education about unconscious bias, revision of all training materials, new service standards emphasizing equal treatment regardless of appearance or background. Phase 3 would tackle structural reforms, diverse hiring at all levels, transparent accountability systems, independent review of passenger complaints, regular assessment of service consistency across demographic groups. As she finalizes her notes, Dr. Foster allows herself a moment to reflect on how differently this day had unfolded than she'd anticipated. The humiliation and anger she'd experienced in that first-class cabin had been real, but so was her determination to transform that negative experience into positive change. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. You can be part of the problem or part of the solution, Ms. Turner. The choice is yours. Dr. Foster sits across from Melissa Turner in a conference room at Meridian headquarters, the morning sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Melissa looks different today. The arrogant confidence replaced by genuine humility, her posture reflecting the weight of her actions and their consequences. "I want to be part of the solution," she responds, her voice steady despite her evident nervousness. "What happened yesterday? What I did. It forced me to confront attitudes I didn't even realize I was carrying." Dr. Foster studies her carefully. Self-awareness is valuable, but implementing real change requires more than good intentions. It requires consistent action, even when uncomfortable. I understand that Melissa nods, and I'm prepared to do the work. Dr. Foster slides a folder across the table. This is the framework for our Sky Equity Initiative. Phase 1 begins today, if you're serious about being part of the solution. I want you to review this carefully and provide your honest assessment, including identifying points of likely resistance from other staff. Melissa accepts the folder, her expression solemn. "Thank you for this opportunity. I know I haven't earned your trust yet, but I will." This isn't about trust, Dr. Foster clarifies. It's about leveraging perspectives from all parts of the organization, including those who've participated in the problematic behaviors we're addressing. As Melissa leaves with the documents, Jennifer Williams enters, eyebrows raised in surprise. That was unexpected. "Are you sure about bringing her into the fold?" "Not entirely," Dr. Foster admits. "But transformation requires allowing for personal growth and redemption. If she's genuine, her insights could be valuable. And if she's not, then we'll know soon enough," Dr. Foster concludes. What's next on the agenda? Victoria Palmer is waiting in the main conference room with her attorney, Jennifer reports. Unlike Melissa, she's taking a defensive position. The attorney has prepared a statement claiming Victoria was simply following established protocols and bears no personal responsibility. Dr. Foster nods unsurprised. That's consistent with her character as observed. Schedule 15 minutes for that meeting. No more. They walk together through the executive floor of Meridian headquarters, where the atmosphere has transformed overnight. Staff members who 24 hours ago had never heard of Dr. Gabrielle Foster now watch her with a mixture of apprehension and curiosity as she passes. In the main conference room, Victoria Palmer sits rigidly beside a sharp-featured attorney in an expensive suit. Both stand as Dr. Foster enters. Dr. Foster. "I'm Christopher Walton, representing Ms. Palmer." The attorney begins immediately. "Before we proceed, I want to state for the record that my client was acting in accordance with Meridian's established procedures during yesterday's incident. Any suggestion of personal discriminatory intent is categorically denied." Noted. Dr. Foster responds simply, taking a seat. Ms. Palmer. "I appreciate you coming in today." Victoria's expression remains defensive. "I didn't have much choice, did I?" "Actually, you did." Dr. Foster corrects her. You could have resigned immediately, as several other members of management have chosen to do. The fact that you're here suggests you want something, perhaps to defend your position or negotiate your continued employment. My client has served Meridian Airlines with distinction for over 20 years, Walton interjects. Her record speaks for itself. Yes, it does, Dr. Foster agrees. And that record includes implementing and enforcing policies that systematically disadvantaged certain passengers based on appearance and perceived status. Those policies were approved at the highest levels of the company. Victoria counters, color rising in her cheeks. I didn't create them. But you embraced them, Dr. Foster observes. You trained others to implement them. You defended them yesterday on that aircraft. I was doing my job. That's precisely the problem. Dr. Foster responds quietly. When doing your job means treating people unequally, it's time to question the job itself. Victoria's attorney leans forward. Dr. Foster, what exactly is your intention regarding my client's employment status? That depends on Ms. Palmer, Dr. Foster replies, turning her attention back to Victoria. Unlike Ms. Turner, who has expressed genuine remorse and a desire to participate in reform efforts, you appear to be primarily concerned with avoiding personal accountability. This is unfair, Victoria protests. One incident is being used to dismantle my entire career. It wasn't one incident, Dr. Foster corrects her. It was one visible manifestation of a pattern that data shows has existed throughout your tenure. A pattern you helped create and maintain. She slides a folder across the table. These are your options, Ms. Palmer. Option 1. Resignation with standard severance and a non-disparagement agreement. Option 2. Reassignment to the implementation team for our Sky Equity initiative, working under supervision to reform the very systems you helped build. The choice is yours. This is coercion, Walton objects. No, Dr. Foster contradicts calmly. It's accountability with an opportunity for redemption, Miss. Palmer can choose to leave Meridian with her professional reputation intact, or she can choose to be part of correcting the problems she helped create. What she cannot do is continue in her current role enforcing discriminatory policies. Victoria stares at the folder without opening it. And if I fight this, if I go public with how I'm being treated, that is also your choice, Dr. Foster acknowledges. But I should mention that we've already received statements from 17 current and former Meridian employees detailing discriminatory practices they were instructed to implement under your supervision. Those would necessarily become public in any legal proceedings. The implied threat lands heavily. Victoria exchanges a look with her attorney, who gives a slight nod. I'll review my options, she says stiffly. Please do. Dr. Foster responds, standing to indicate the meeting is concluded. I'll need your decision by 5 p.m. today. As Victoria and her attorney leave, Sophie Bennett enters the conference room, her expression a mixture of determination and nervousness. Dr. Foster, Jennifer said you wanted to see me. Yes, Sophie. Please sit down. Dr. Foster gestures to the chair Victoria just vacated. I understand you volunteered to join the implementation team for our reform initiative. Sophie nods eagerly. I want to help change things. What I saw happening, not just yesterday with you, but every day with so many passengers, it's wrong. And I think because I've seen it from the inside, I can help identify the problems more effectively. I agree, Dr. Foster says. But I need to understand something first. When you witnessed discrimination before yesterday, what did you do about it? Sophie's enthusiasm falters. I didn't do enough, she admits. I expressed concerns to my supervisors a few times, but when nothing changed, I stopped speaking up. I told myself I knew that I didn't have the authority to question established practices. She meets Dr. Foster's gaze directly. I was complicit through my silence, and I regret that. Dr. Foster nods, appreciating the honesty. Recognition of past inaction is the first step toward meaningful change. What would you do differently now? Everything Sophie responds with newfound conviction. I'd document problems systematically. I'd advocate directly for passengers being mistreated. I'd refuse to implement discriminatory practices, even if it meant risking my position. That kind of courage will be essential in the transformation we're undertaking, Dr. Foster tells her. Systems don't change easily, especially when those benefiting from the status quo resist adjustment. Are you prepared for that resistance? Yes, Sophie affirms without hesitation. Yesterday showed me that staying silent isn't neutral. It's harmful. I won't make that mistake again. Then welcome to the implementation team, Dr. Foster says, extending her hand. We begin comprehensive review of training materials this afternoon. I expect your candid input on where the problems are embedded and how they can be effectively addressed. As Sophie leaves energized by her new role, Thomas Hernandez enters with his tablet. The company-wide announcement is scheduled for 2 p.m., he informs Dr. Foster. Reynolds has reviewed it and, surprisingly, offered his full support. I think he's recognized which way the wind is blowing and decided to position himself as an ally of reform rather than an obstacle. Pragmatic Dr. Foster observes. What about Melissa Turner's proposal to join the implementation effort? Initial assessment is positive, Thomas reports. Her insights on the unofficial passenger filtering practices are detailed and forthcoming. If her commitment to change is genuine, she could be a valuable asset. Dr. Foster nods thoughtfully. Keep her involved but supervised. Transformation is possible, but it requires both opportunity and accountability. As she prepares for the company-wide announcement that will formally launch the Sky Equity Initiative, Dr. Foster reflects on the choices being made throughout the organization. Choices that will determine whether Meridian evolves into a model of equitable treatment or remains entrenched in discriminatory practices. Some, like Melissa and Sophie, are choosing growth and change, however uncomfortable. Others, like Victoria, are struggling to accept that the status quo is no longer acceptable. The real work is just beginning. Dr. Foster. How does it feel to own the airline that discriminated against you? The reporter's question cuts through the crowd of journalists assembled for the press conference. Foster stands at the podium, poised and professional in a tailored navy suit, the Meridian Airlines logo visible on the wall behind her, soon to be redesigned as part of the comprehensive rebranding initiative. This isn't about ownership, she responds evenly. It's about responsibility. What I experienced yesterday is what countless passengers experience daily across the aviation industry. The difference is that I'm now in a position to implement meaningful change. Another reporter calls out. Was the acquisition of Meridian planned before the incident? Or was it retribution? The acquisition was finalized minutes before the confrontation occurred. Dr. Foster clarifies. It was the culmination of months of planning and due diligence motivated by the opportunity to transform Meridian into an industry leader in equitable passenger treatment. What about the flight attendants involved? Have they been terminated? Personnel matters will be handled appropriately and fairly, she responds. But I want to emphasize that this initiative isn't about punishing individuals. It's about correcting flawed systems that encouraged problematic behavior. The questions continue, each one probing for drama or conflict, each answered with measured clarity that redirects attention to the substantive reforms being implemented. In a quiet corner of the press room, Thomas Hernandez monitors social media response in real time, noting the shift in public conversation from outrage over the incident to interest in the reform initiative. The hashtags have evolved from #FlyingWhileBlack to #SkyEquity, signaling a transition from problem to solution in the public consciousness. Jennifer Williams approaches with an update. CNN wants an exclusive interview. Their angle is from discrimination to transformation, how one incident is changing an industry. Dr. Foster considers this briefly. Schedule it for tomorrow. Frame it as a conversation about institutional change rather than personal vindication. As the press conference concludes, Dr. Foster moves to a smaller meeting room where a team from Horizon Medical Technology's Communications Department awaits with Emma Whitaker, whose live stream had catapulted the incident into national attention. Ms. Whitaker, Dr. Foster greets her. "Thank you for joining us." Emma looks both nervous and excited to be included in these discussions. "I'm just glad I could help document what happened. People need to see these things unfiltered. Precisely why I've asked you here today," Dr. Foster explains. "Your live stream captured something cameras often miss. The reality of discrimination as it unfolds not after it's been repackaged or explained away. We'd like to incorporate portions of that footage into our training materials with your permission." Of course, Emma agrees immediately. "Use whatever helps. We'd also like to discuss the possibility of you consulting on our public education campaign," Jennifer adds. "Your perspective as a witness who chose to document and speak out would be valuable." As they discuss the details, Dr. Foster's phone buzzes with an urgent message from Richard Montgomery. Victoria Palmer has scheduled a press conference. Appears to be planning a counter-narrative. Legal standing by. Dr. Foster excuses herself to address this development, finding Montgomery waiting in an adjacent office. She's positioning herself as a victim of corporate restructuring. Montgomery informs her without preamble, claiming her perfect record is being tarnished by new ownership looking for scapegoats. "Predictable," Dr. Foster responds, "and ultimately ineffective. The documentation of her role in implementing discriminatory practices is comprehensive. Any attempt to reframe this as personal victimization will collapse under scrutiny." "Agreed." Montgomery nods. "Still, it could create unnecessary distractions from the reform initiative, or provide an opportunity to clarify exactly what we're addressing," Dr. Foster suggests. "Sometimes resistance illuminates the very problems we're trying to solve." She returns to the communications team meeting where discussion of the public education campaign continues. The plan taking shape is multifaceted, transparent reporting of Meridian's ongoing reforms, passenger education about their rights, industry outreach to encourage similar changes at other airlines. By late afternoon, Victoria Palmer's press conference has been widely covered, but not in the way she intended. Her defensive posture and refusal to acknowledge documented problems has only highlighted the necessity of the changes being implemented. Social media commentary overwhelmingly supports the reform initiative, with many users sharing their own experiences of discrimination in air travel. That evening, Dr. Foster reviews media coverage with her team, noting the evolving narrative. What began as a story about one black woman's humiliation has transformed into a conversation about institutional reform and accountability. The footage of her confrontation with Melissa and Victoria continues to circulate, but now alongside coverage of the comprehensive changes being implemented at Meridian. "The media cycle is working in our favor," Thomas observes. "The story has evolved from outrage to action, which aligns perfectly with our messaging strategy. Let's ensure it continues in that direction," Dr. Foster responds. "Tomorrow's focus should be on the specific reforms we're implementing: the elimination of biased metrics, the revision of training materials, the independent review process for passenger complaints. Keep the emphasis on substantive change rather than personalities or conflicts." As the team disperses for the evening, Dr. Foster remains in her temporary office at Meridian headquarters, reviewing the implementation timeline for the Sky Equity Initiative. The media attention, while intense, has created a unique opportunity to accelerate changes that might otherwise have faced significant internal resistance. Tomorrow, Phase 1 officially begins. And with it, the real work of transformation. The data is unambiguous. Dr. Foster stands before the assembled leadership team of Meridian Airlines digital displays around the boardroom, showing statistical analyses of passenger complaints, service disparities, and staff evaluation metrics. Over the past 5 years, Meridian has consistently applied different standards of service based on perceived passenger status, with race, age, and appearance serving as primary determining factors. Alexander Reynolds, seated at the opposite end of the table, nods reluctantly. The evidence before them cannot be reasonably denied. What matters now, Dr. Foster continues, is how we respond to this reality. Not with defensiveness or cosmetic adjustments, but with comprehensive reform that addresses both explicit policies and implicit practices. She gestures to Thomas Hernandez, who activates the main display showing the 3-phase implementation plan for the Sky Equity Initiative. Phase 1 begins immediately, Thomas explains. All staff evaluation metrics related to premium cabin integrity or similar concepts will be eliminated today. Verification procedures will be standardized to ensure consistent application regardless of passenger appearance. An anonymous reporting system for passengers who experience discriminatory treatment will be activated by end of week. Cynthia Blackwell, VP of Operations, raises a concern. Some of these changes could impact our ability to prevent actual fraud or security issues. A valid consideration Dr. Foster acknowledges, which is why we're not eliminating verification procedures entirely. We're standardizing them to ensure they're applied equally to all passengers. The issue isn't verification itself, but selective verification based on biased assumptions. Reynolds leans forward. What about training? Our staff will need guidance on implementing these changes. Phase 2 addresses that directly. Thomas continues. Comprehensive education on unconscious bias begins next week for all customer-facing staff. Training materials are being completely revised to eliminate problematic examples and assumptions. New service standards are being developed that emphasize consistent, respectful treatment regardless of passenger appearance or background. Amanda Wilson, still clinging to her position as Director of Flight Services, despite the evidence of her department's central role in perpetuating discriminatory practices, interjects skeptically. This sounds expensive and potentially disruptive to operations. Less expensive than continued discrimination, Dr. Foster responds evenly. And yes, meaningful change is often disruptive. That's precisely why it's necessary. The systems currently in place are producing unacceptable outcomes. Disrupting those systems is not a bug in our plan. It's a feature. The presentation continues with Phase 3 structural reforms, including diverse hiring at all levels, transparent accountability systems, independent review of passenger complaints, and regular assessment of service consistency across demographic groups. This isn't a short-term response to a PR crisis, Dr. Foster emphasizes as the presentation concludes. It's a fundamental reimagining of how Meridian operates and how we measure success. Equal dignity for all passengers isn't just a moral imperative. It's a business strategy that will distinguish us in the marketplace. Reynolds, who has been notably attentive throughout, addresses the room. I want to be clear about my position. Having reviewed the evidence and considered the proposed changes, I fully support the Sky Equity Initiative. Dr. Foster has identified legitimate problems in our operations, and the solutions proposed are both necessary and thoughtful. His public alignment with the reform effort sends a clear message to the remaining leadership team. Resistance will not be supported from the top. As the meeting transitions to implementation logistics, Sophie Bennett enters with Melissa Turner, both now officially part of the Sky Equity team. Their arrival generates visible discomfort among some executives who recognize Melissa from the viral video. Dr. Foster addresses this directly. Ms. Turner has provided valuable insights into how discriminatory practices were implemented and incentivized. Her perspective as someone who participated in these practices is essential to understanding how they became normalized and how we can effectively change them. Melissa, visibly uncomfortable but determined, adds, "What happened on that flight revealed problems much larger than my individual actions. I'm committed to helping correct a system that rewarded the wrong behaviors and discouraged the right ones." The afternoon proceeds with detailed planning sessions, department heads receiving specific assignments related to the initiative's first phase. By evening, Tangible changes are already being implemented. The problematic metrics removed from staff evaluation systems, preliminary revisions to verification procedures distributed to frontline staff, hotline numbers established for employees to report concerns about discriminatory practices. Dr. Foster concludes the day with a final meeting with Reynolds Montgomery and key implementation team members. Day 1 exceeded expectations, Thomas reports. Resistance has been minimal, likely due to the overwhelming evidence and clear executive support. The press coverage remains positive, with industry analysts predicting similar reforms at other airlines. What about Victoria Palmer's counter-narrative, Dr. Foster inquires. Ineffective, Jennifer responds. Her press conference generated limited coverage, mostly negative. Former subordinates have come forward contradicting her claims of exemplary leadership. Reynolds, who has been quietly observing, finally speaks. I've been with Meridian for 8 years. I considered myself an effective ethical leader. Yet somehow, under my watch, these practices flourished. That's humbling to acknowledge. Self-reflection is essential for meaningful change. Dr. Foster responds. What matters now is not what was overlooked in the past, but what is corrected going forward. Reynolds nods, his expression thoughtful. I've been thinking about my father. He was a black man working in corporate America in the 1970s. The stories he told me about the barriers he faced, I somehow convinced myself those issues were largely behind us. Yesterday's incident and today's data have forced me to recognize how wrong I was. Recognition is the first step, Dr. Foster acknowledges. Implementation is where the real challenge lies. As the meeting concludes, Dr. Foster remains briefly with Thomas and Jennifer to review the next day's priorities. The momentum is strong, Thomas observes, but maintaining it will require visible progress that staff and passengers can recognize immediately. Agreed, Dr. Foster says. Let's prioritize the passenger reporting system and standardized verification procedures. Those will create the most noticeable changes in the short term. She pauses, considering something else. And let's schedule a conversation with the design team about rebranding. If we're transforming the company's culture, the visual identity should reflect that evolution. By the time Dr. Foster returns to her hotel that night, the first day of implementation has generated substantial progress. An email from Professor Adam Taylor confirms that the Independent Review Board is fully assembled and will begin work within 48 hours. Messages from civil rights organizations offer resources and support for the initiative. Social media continues to amplify both the original incident and the comprehensive response, creating public pressure that reinforces the internal changes underway. The transformation has begun in earnest. Welcome to Day 1 of Sky Equity Training. Sophie Bennett stands before the first group of flight attendants, her nervousness visible, but her conviction clear. What we're starting today isn't just another corporate program. It's a fundamental shift in how we approach our work and our passengers. The training room at Meridian's Operations Center is filled with 30 flight attendants from various routes and experience levels. Some appear skeptical, others curious, a few openly supportive of the changes being introduced. I know many of you have questions about what prompted these changes. Sophie continues. Rather than relying on rumors or news reports, we want to show you directly. The lights dim slightly as carefully selected portions of the footage from Dr. Foster's confrontation play on the large screen. The room falls silent as they watch their colleagues implementing practices that, when viewed objectively, are unmistakably discriminatory. When the lights return to full brightness, Melissa Turner steps forward, her presence creating a ripple of surprise among the attendants who recognize her from the video. Yes, that's me. She acknowledges directly, her voice steady despite obvious discomfort. That's me, implementing practices I was trained to follow, rewarded for enforcing and never questioned, until I saw myself through someone else's eyes. She pauses, surveying the room. I'm not here to be shamed. I'm here because what happened on that flight revealed problems much bigger than my individual actions. Problems we all participated in, whether actively or through silence. A senior flight attendant raises his hand. We were taught those procedures were about security and fraud prevention. Are you saying we're just supposed to stop verifying passengers' eligibility for premium services? No, Sophie clarifies. We're saying verification should be consistent for all passengers, not selectively applied based on assumptions about who looks like they belong in which cabin. Melissa adds, think about it. How many times have you asked an older white businessman in a suit to prove he belongs in first class? Now compare that to how often you've questioned younger passengers of color, or anyone dressed casually. The data shows massive disparities that can't be explained by actual fraud rates. The training continues with concrete examples of how implicit bias influenced service decisions, statistical evidence of disparate treatment, and specific procedural changes being implemented. By mid-morning, the initial resistance has largely given way to engagement with attendants actively participating in discussions about how to recognize and correct biased practices. Across the organization, similar transformations are unfolding. In the reservation center, staff are being retrained on standardized verification protocols that eliminate subjective judgments. In the marketing department, teams are reviewing all promotional materials to ensure diverse representation. In HR, hiring and promotion practices are being revised to address historical imbalances in staff demographics. Dr. Foster moves between these various implementation sites throughout the day, observing the changes taking root and addressing concerns as they arise. By afternoon, she joins Thomas Hernandez in reviewing the first metrics from the passenger reporting system launched that morning. 7 reports in the first 6 hours, Thomas notes, all documenting experiences similar to yours. Selective verification, questioning of legitimacy, subtle or explicit suggestions that the passenger doesn't belong in premium cabins. And the response protocols. Working as designed, Thomas confirms. Each report is acknowledged, immediately investigated within 24 hours, and addressed directly with both the passenger and any staff involved. The focus is on correction and education rather than punishment, unless patterns of deliberate discrimination emerge. Dr. Foster nods with satisfaction. What about the standardized verification procedures implementation started this morning on all domestic flights? Initial feedback from staff is mixed. Some appreciate the clarity of consistent protocols, others feel it's unnecessary work when they can tell who needs verification. That perception is precisely why standardized procedures are essential, Dr. Foster observes. The belief that one can tell who belongs where is the foundation of discriminatory treatment. As the week progresses, the implementation expands to international routes and ground operations. Training materials are completely revised, removing problematic examples and assumptions. Service standards are redefined to emphasize consistent, respectful treatment. Staff evaluation metrics are reconstructed around quality of service, rather than integrity protection. By the second week, visible changes begin to appear in Meridian's physical spaces as well. Signage is updated to use more inclusive language. Verification points are redesigned for greater privacy and dignity. Uniform guidelines are revised to allow greater cultural expression while maintaining professional standards. The rebranding initiative also takes shape, with design teams developing concepts that visually represent the company's evolution. The proposed new logo incorporates elements symbolizing equality and connection, while updated color schemes and typography signal a more modern, inclusive approach. Throughout this transformation, Melissa Turner continues her unexpected journey from symbol of discrimination to advocate for change. Her willingness to acknowledge mistakes and commit to improvement makes her a powerful example of the personal growth the initiative aims to foster. In training sessions with staff, her candor about her own biases and how they influenced her behavior creates space for others to engage in similar self-reflection. Sophie Bennett thrives in her new role. Her natural empathy and clear communication skills, making her an effective liaison between leadership and frontline staff. Her understanding of operational realities helps ensure that new protocols are practical and implementable, not just theoretically sound. 3 weeks into implementation, Dr. Foster meets with the Independent Review Board, chaired by Professor Taylor, to assess progress and address challenges. The cultural shift is tangible, Professor Taylor reports. Staff interviews reveal significant changes in how service decisions are approached and justified. Passenger feedback indicates noticeable improvements in consistency of treatment. There are still pockets of resistance, another board member notes, particularly among longer-tenured staff who've internalized certain assumptions about passenger verification. That's to be expected, Dr. Foster acknowledges. Cultural change isn't instantaneous, especially when it challenges long-held beliefs. The important thing is that the structural supports for discriminatory practices have been removed. Behavior will continue to evolve as new norms become established. By the end of the first month, Meridian Airlines has visibly transformed. The Sky Equity Initiative has moved from concept to operational reality with measurable improvements in service consistency and passenger satisfaction. What began as a response to a single incident of discrimination has evolved into a comprehensive reimagining of how an airline can operate with genuine equity at its core. The work isn't complete. Cultural change never is. But the foundation has been firmly established. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the inaugural Summit on Equity in Aviation. Dr. Foster stands at the podium in the grand ballroom of the San Francisco Marriott, addressing representatives from 27 airlines, the FAA, international aviation authorities, and civil rights organizations. What began as an incident aboard a single flight has evolved into a conversation about fundamental fairness in how the aviation industry serves diverse populations. The atmosphere in the room is charged with a mixture of interest skepticism and recognition that the changes implemented at Meridian may soon become industry standard, whether through voluntary adoption or regulatory mandate. Over the past 2 months, Meridian Airlines has undergone comprehensive transformation. Dr. Foster continues. We've eliminated biased metrics, standardized verification procedures, retrained staff at all levels, and implemented transparent accountability systems. Today, I'm pleased to announce the results of these changes. The large screen behind her displays statistical analyses comparing passenger experiences before and after implementation of the Sky Equity Initiative. Complaints about discriminatory treatment have decreased by 78% overall, she reports. More significantly, the disparity in complaint rates between demographic groups has narrowed dramatically, indicating more consistent service across all passenger populations. Meanwhile, customer satisfaction scores have increased by 23%, and employee morale has improved by similar margins. She pauses, allowing these statistics to register with the audience. These improvements weren't achieved through cosmetic adjustments or one-time sensitivity training. They required fundamental reassessment of how we measure success, how we train our people, and how we hold ourselves accountable. Dr. Foster introduces Sophie Bennett and Melissa Turner, who share their perspectives on the implementation process, the challenges encountered, the resistance overcome, and the tangible improvements achieved. Their presentation includes specific examples of policy changes before and after comparisons of training materials and testimonials from passengers who've experienced the difference. During the networking lunch that follows, representatives from other airlines approach Dr. Foster with varying degrees of interest and commitment. Some are genuinely motivated to implement similar changes, recognizing both the moral imperative and business advantages. Others are primarily concerned with avoiding similar public relations crises or potential regulatory attention. Dr. Foster calls a voice she recognizes, Javier Rodriguez, the passenger who had spoken up during her confrontation with Melissa and Victoria. "I wasn't sure you'd remember me." "Of course I do," she responds warmly. "Your willingness to speak up made a difference that day. Nothing compared to what you've accomplished since," he observes. "I'm here representing International Airways. I've been promoted to VP of Customer Experience, and we're very interested in implementing something similar to your Sky Equity Initiative." "That's excellent news," Dr. Foster responds. I'd be happy to connect you with our implementation team. The materials we've developed are being made available to any airline committed to meaningful change. Throughout the afternoon, Dr. Foster participates in panel discussions and working sessions focused on translating Meridian's experience into adaptable frameworks for other airlines. The emphasis remains consistently practical: specific policies that can be changed, metrics that should be eliminated, training approaches that effectively address bias without triggering defensiveness. By evening, when Dr. Foster delivers the summit's closing address, the mood has shifted from initial skepticism to genuine engagement with the possibility of industry-wide transformation. What we've begun at Meridian isn't proprietary, she emphasizes. It isn't a competitive advantage to be guarded. It's a model that we hope will be adopted, adapted, and improved upon throughout the aviation industry. Equal dignity for all passengers shouldn't be a distinguishing feature of one airline. It should be the universal standard against which all airlines are measured. The applause that follows signals a turning point, not just for Meridian, but potentially for commercial aviation as a whole. In the weeks that follow, the impact continues to spread. 3 major airlines announced similar initiatives explicitly crediting Meridian's model. The FAA forms a special committee to review industry practices related to passenger verification and service standards. Civil rights organizations report decreased complaints about discriminatory treatment across multiple carriers. Media coverage evolves from focusing on the original incident to examining the broader transformation it sparked. Industry publications feature analyses of Meridian's improved performance metrics since implementing the Sky Equity Initiative. Business schools begin developing case studies on how addressing discrimination can drive organizational improvement and customer satisfaction. 2 months after the summit, Dr. Foster receives a call from Alexander Reynolds, who has become an unexpected ally in the transformation process. The quarterly results are in, he informs her, unable to keep the surprise from his voice. Passenger numbers are up 12% overall, with a 27% increase in premium cabin bookings. Customer satisfaction is at an all-time high. Employee retention has improved significantly. And all this during what's traditionally our slowest season. People respond to being treated with dignity. Dr. Foster observes simply. The board is extremely pleased, Reynolds continues. They've approved the full rebranding proposal and accelerated the timeline for Phase 3 implementation. And they've asked me to convey their formal acknowledgement that your approach has proven more successful than anyone anticipated. I appreciate that Dr. Foster responds. But the real measure of success isn't quarterly results. It's sustainable change that outlasts the initial momentum. The true test will come when media attention fades and the pressure for conformity diminishes. I think you'll find that the changes have taken root more deeply than you might expect, Reynolds suggests. What began as compliance has evolved into conviction for many of our people. They've seen the benefits of equitable treatment, not just for passengers, but for themselves as well. As Dr. Foster ends the call, she reflects on this unexpected outcome. The transformation that began with her humiliation in that first-class cabin has grown beyond anything she could have anticipated. What started as necessary correction has become genuine evolution, not just for Meridian Airlines, but potentially for an entire industry. And somewhere, she thinks her father is smiling. Welcome aboard, Dr. Foster. The greeting comes from Melissa Turner, now serving as lead training coordinator for passenger experience, as Dr. Foster boards the rebranded Horizon Airways flight from San Francisco to Boston. It's good to see you again. 6 months have transformed not just the airline, but Melissa herself. The defensive arrogance has been replaced by genuine professionalism and warmth that extends equally to all passengers moving through the boarding process. Thank you, Melissa, Dr. Foster responds with a smile. How's the new training program progressing? Exceptionally well, Melissa reports with evident pride. The latest cohort graduated last week, 94 new flight attendants all trained with the Sky Equity protocols from day one. It's amazing to work with people who've never known the old way of doing things. Dr. Foster makes her way to her seat in first class, the same 2A that had been the site of confrontation half a year earlier. The cabin itself looks different now, part of the comprehensive rebranding that transformed Meridian Airlines into Horizon Airways. The color scheme is warmer, the lighting more welcoming, the overall aesthetic designed to convey accessibility rather than exclusivity. More significant than these visual changes is the atmosphere among the crew and passengers. The standardized verification procedures have eliminated the subtle and not-so-subtle disparities in how different passengers are treated. The consistent application of service standards has replaced the previous culture of selective deference and suspicion. As Dr. Foster settles into her seat, she observes the boarding process with professional interest. A young black man in casual clothing is welcomed to first class with the same courtesy extended to an older white executive in a business suit. A Hispanic family with small children receives the same attentive assistance as a celebrity recognizable from recent films. The differences in treatment that were once pervasive have been systematically addressed through policy changes, training, and accountability measures. Sophie Bennett approaches now serving as Service Quality Manager. Dr. Foster, it's wonderful to see you. I wanted to share our latest metrics with you. Complaints about discriminatory treatment are down 93% compared to pre-implementation levels, and the remaining complaints are being resolved through our rapid response protocol with a 97% satisfaction rate. That's excellent progress, Dr. Foster acknowledges. What about staff feedback? Sophie's expression brightens further. Overwhelmingly positive. The standardized procedures have actually made the job easier in many ways. Less subjective judgment required clearer guidelines for handling unusual situations. And morale has improved significantly now that people don't feel pressured to enforce problematic policies. And Melissa, how has her transition to training been received? Her story is powerful, Sophie confirms. New hires connect with her journey from being part of the problem to helping create the solution. It makes the training about growth rather than blame, which helps overcome defensiveness. As the flight reaches cruising altitude, Dr. Foster reviews documents on her tablet, preparation for her keynote address at the National Aviation Service Conference the following day. Her presentation will focus on how the Sky Equity Initiative has evolved from crisis response to comprehensive transformation with measurable benefits for passengers, employees, and the company's bottom line. The lead flight attendant approaches with a tablet of her own. Dr. Foster, I thought you might be interested in today's passenger feedback. We've implemented the real-time response system you recommended, and the results are remarkable. The tablet displays passenger comments submitted during the first hour of the flight, overwhelmingly positive and specifically noting the consistent, respectful treatment experienced regardless of appearance, age, or traveling class. Thank you, Dr. Foster says. It's gratifying to see the changes taking hold so effectively. Alexander Reynolds joins her a short while later, taking the adjacent seat during a break in the service routine. As CEO of Horizon Airways, he has become an unexpected champion of the transformation process, his initial wariness replaced by genuine commitment to the new approach. The board received the quarterly analysis yesterday, he informs her. Customer satisfaction is at an all-time high. Booking rates have increased across all demographics. Employee retention has improved dramatically, and we're seeing measurable financial benefits. Reduced complaint management costs, decreased legal exposure, improved efficiency from standardized procedures. Dr. Foster nods, pleased but not surprised. When people are treated with consistent dignity, everyone benefits. The previous approach wasn't just morally problematic, it was operationally inefficient and financially short-sighted. 3 other airlines have now implemented similar initiatives, Reynolds continues. And the FAA is considering new regulatory standards based on our model. What began as a response to a single incident has become an industry-wide reassessment of fundamental practices. That was always the goal, Dr. Foster acknowledges. Not just to correct what happened to me, but to address the conditions that made it possible and common throughout commercial aviation. As Reynolds returns to his duties, Dr. Foster gazes out the window at the clouds below, reflecting on the journey of the past 6 months. The humiliation she experienced in this cabin had been transformed into something powerful and positive. Not through vengeance or punishment, but through strategic structural change that addressed root causes rather than symptoms. Her father would have been proud, not just of her acquisition of an airline, impressive as that was, but of how she had used that position to create space for dignity where exclusion had previously flourished. That was the true legacy she had built in his honor. The evidence is clear. Equity and excellence are not competing priorities. They are complementary forces that reinforce each other. Dr. Foster's voice carries confidently through the grand ballroom of the Boston Convention Center, where over 2,000 aviation industry professionals have gathered for the Global Aviation Service Summit. Behind her, slides display the comprehensive data collected during the first 6 months of the Sky Equity Initiative, now rebranded as the Horizon model as it spreads to other airlines. When we eliminated biased metrics and standardized our verification procedures, we didn't just reduce complaints about discriminatory treatment, she continues. We improved operational efficiency by 18%. When we reconstructed our training around consistent dignity rather than selective deference, we didn't just increase passenger satisfaction. We reduced employee turnover by 34%. The audience, initially skeptical when the presentation began, now leans forward with evident interest. These aren't just abstract principles or moral arguments. They're concrete business outcomes that any airline would value. The transformation wasn't without challenges, Dr. Foster acknowledges. Cultural change never is. We encountered resistance at multiple levels. From executives concerned about disruption, from staff accustomed to operating under different assumptions, from passengers habituated to certain forms of differential treatment. She gestures to Sophie Bennett, who joins her at the podium to present the training protocols developed during implementation. What made the difference was our approach to resistance, Sophie explains to the audience. We didn't dismiss it or try to overcome it through authority. We engaged with it directly, understanding that resistance often contains valuable information about obstacles we need to address. Sophie walks the audience through specific examples, the verification protocols that initially seemed cumbersome until simplified through staff input, the service standards that required adjustment to account for cultural differences on international routes, the accountability measures that evolved to emphasize improvement rather than punishment. Melissa Turner takes the stage next, her presence creating a ripple of recognition among those familiar with the original incident. 6 months ago, I was the face of discriminatory treatment in aviation, she begins candidly. Today, I'm part of the team leading its transformation. That journey has taught me something crucial about change. It requires both accountability for past actions and opportunity to participate in creating better systems. She describes the training program she now leads, how it addresses bias without triggering defensiveness, how it equips staff with practical tools for ensuring consistent treatment, how it creates space for genuine evolution of perspective and practice. Following these presentations, Dr. Foster moderates a panel discussion featuring executives from airlines that have implemented similar initiatives, regulatory officials considering industry-wide standards, and civil rights advocates monitoring the impact on passenger experiences. The key insight from Horizon's experience is that addressing discrimination isn't just morally right. It's operationally advantageous, states the CEO of Pacific Airlines, which has recently implemented its own version of the Horizon model. We've seen immediate improvements in customer satisfaction, staff engagement, and operational efficiency. An FAA representative adds, "The data emerging from these initiatives is compelling enough that we're developing new regulatory frameworks based on these principles. Equal treatment of passengers shouldn't be optional or variable between carriers. It should be a consistent standard throughout commercial aviation. Throughout the afternoon breakout sessions, delve into specific aspects of implementation, from policy development to staff training metrics, adjustment to accountability systems. Dr. Foster moves between these sessions, offering insights from Horizon's experience while emphasizing that each organization must adapt the principles to their particular context. By evening, when she delivers the summit's closing address, the mood has shifted from initial interest to genuine commitment. Representatives from 17 airlines have formally pledged to implement comparable initiatives. Regulatory authorities from 3 countries have announced reviews of current standards. Industry publications have committed to regular reporting on equity metrics alongside traditional performance measures. What we've begun isn't just a program or initiative, Dr. Foster concludes. It's a fundamental reimagining of how commercial aviation can operate, with equal dignity as a core principle rather than an aspirational ideal. The transformation at Horizon Airways demonstrates that this approach isn't just ethically sound, but practically beneficial for everyone involved: passengers, employees, and companies alike. The standing ovation that follows signals something more significant than mere appreciation for a well-delivered presentation. It represents recognition of a genuine turning point, an industry beginning to acknowledge and address patterns of discrimination that have persisted for decades. As attendees file out of the ballroom, many stop to speak with Dr. Foster personally, sharing their own experiences with discrimination in aviation or expressing commitment to implementing changes within their organizations. These conversations continue at the evening reception, where the focus remains substantively on implementation strategies rather than shifting to the usual networking small talk. Late that night, as Dr. Foster reviews her notes in preparation for the next day's workshops, she receives a message from Jennifer Williams. "Victoria Palmer has requested a meeting with you tomorrow morning, says she has something important to discuss." Dr. Foster pauses, surprised by this development. Victoria had resigned rather than participate in the transformation process, and subsequent reports suggested she had become increasingly bitter about what she characterized as unfair treatment. Confirm the meeting, Dr. Foster decides after brief consideration. 30 minutes at my hotel, 8:00 a.m. Whatever Victoria wants to discuss, Dr. Foster is confident in the changes implemented and the data supporting their effectiveness. This conference has confirmed what she's observed directly. The transformation sparked by her humiliation aboard that flight has evolved into something far more significant than a response to a single incident. It has become a model for meaningful change. Dr. Foster stands alone at her father's grave, early morning sunlight filtering through the trees of the peaceful cemetery. 6 months of intense work have allowed little time for this kind of quiet reflection, but being back in Boston for the conference provided an opportunity she couldn't pass up. "We did it, Dad," she says softly, placing fresh flowers beside the headstone. "Not just acquiring the airline, that was just the beginning. We changed how it operates, how it treats people. And now that change is spreading throughout the industry." She tells him about the conference, the other airlines implementing similar initiatives, the regulatory standards being developed based on the Horizon model. She describes how Melissa Turner transformed from enforcer of discriminatory practices to advocate for equitable treatment. She explains how Alexander Reynolds evolved from defensive executive to champion of structural change. "Remember when you told me some doors weren't meant for people like us to walk through?" She continues, her voice catching slightly. "We didn't just walk through those doors, Dad. We redesigned them so they're open to everyone." The sound of footsteps on the gravel path interrupts her reflection. Victoria Palmer approaches hesitantly, stopping at a respectful distance when she recognizes the private moment she's interrupting. "I'm sorry," Victoria says. "I can come back later." "No, it's all right," Dr. Foster assures her, checking her watch. "Our meeting isn't for another hour, but we can talk now if you prefer." Victoria nods, clearly nervous, despite her attempt at composure. I've been trying to reach out for weeks. I didn't know if you'd agree to see me. I'm willing to listen, Dr. Foster responds neutrally, neither encouraging nor discouraging whatever Victoria has come to say. I've been watching the changes at Horizon. What used to be Meridian Victoria begins her voice steadier than her expression. At first, I was angry. I felt scapegoated for practices that had been standard throughout the industry. I convinced myself I was the victim of corporate politics and bad timing. She pauses, seeming to gather courage for what comes next. But as I've seen the transformation unfold, not just at Horizon but at other airlines implementing similar changes, I've had to confront some uncomfortable truths about my role in perpetuating discriminatory practices. Dr. Foster listens without interruption, allowing Victoria the space to articulate what is clearly a difficult acknowledgement. The metrics I enforced, the training I provided, the behaviors I rewarded. They did encourage selective treatment based on appearance and assumptions about who belonged in which spaces, Victoria continues. I didn't recognize it as discrimination because it was wrapped in language about security and passenger experience, but the effect was the same. Recognition is an important step, Dr. Foster acknowledges. Why are you telling me this now? Victoria straightens slightly. I've been offered a position with International Airways. They're implementing their own version of the Sky Equity Initiative, and they believe my experience, both in traditional operations and in seeing the consequences of discriminatory practices, could be valuable in their transition process. She meets Dr. Foster's gaze directly. Before accepting, I wanted to speak with you, not to ask forgiveness or to pretend my perspective has completely transformed overnight, but to acknowledge that the changes you've implemented are valid and necessary, and to let you know that I'm committed to being part of the solution moving forward, even if my journey began with resistance. Dr. Foster considers this carefully. People can change, Victoria. Systems can change. That's been the fundamental premise of everything we've done at Horizon. Does that mean you think I should accept the position? That's not for me to decide. Dr. Foster responds, but I believe in allowing space for growth and evolution, both for individuals and organizations. If your commitment to equitable treatment is genuine, your experience could indeed be valuable in implementing effective change. As they walk together back toward the cemetery entrance, the conversation turns to the specific challenges Victoria might face in her potential new role. The resistance she'll encounter, the balance between accountability and opportunity, the practical steps needed to transform ingrained practices. The most important thing I've learned, Dr. Foster tells her, is that meaningful change requires addressing structural issues, not just individual behaviors. The focus shouldn't be on punishing people for following problematic systems, but on creating better systems that encourage more equitable behavior. At the gates of the cemetery, they part ways. Victoria to consider her decision about the job offer, Dr. Foster to prepare for the day's conference sessions. The conversation has brought its own kind of closure, not through forgiveness that erases accountability, but through recognition that transformation is possible even for those who initially resist it. Later that afternoon, between conference sessions, Dr. Foster encounters a young black girl, perhaps 12 years old, wearing a Horizon Airways junior pilot wings pin. The girl's mother explains they're at the convention center for a STEM education fair happening in another wing of the building. She wants to be a pilot, the mother says proudly. Ever since she saw the news stories about the changes at Horizon, she's been obsessed with aviation. Dr. Foster kneels slightly to address the girl directly. That's wonderful. The sky has room for everyone who dreams of flying. Did you really buy a whole airline? The girl asks, eyes wide with wonder. I did, Dr. Foster confirms with a smile. But the important part wasn't buying it. It was changing how it operates so that everyone is treated with equal dignity. Even kids who want to be pilots. Especially kids who want to be pilots, Dr. Foster assures her. In fact, Horizon has just launched a scholarship program for young people interested in aviation careers. It's designed to make sure that talent and passion are what determine who gets to fly, not what they look like or where they come from. The girl's expression brightens further. "Can I apply?" "Absolutely," Dr. Foster tells her, directing her mother to the information on Horizon's website. The first applications are being accepted next month. As they continue their conversation, Dr. Foster learns that the girl's name is Amara, that she's already studying the principles of flight, and that she's convinced she'll be the youngest commercial airline captain in history. Her enthusiasm is infectious, her determination unmistakable. Before they part ways, Dr. Foster gives Amara her business card. "When you're ready to apply for that scholarship, have your mom send me an email. I'd be honored to write you a recommendation letter." Watching them walk away, Dr. Foster feels a profound sense of purpose. This moment, this child's unrestrained ambition, represents the true purpose of everything she's worked to accomplish. Not revenge for her own humiliation, but creation of space where dignity and opportunity are available to everyone, where the next generation can dream without artificial limitations. Full circle, indeed. 1 year ago today, a confrontation aboard Flight 842 sparked a transformation that has reshaped commercial aviation. Dr. Foster stands before an assembled group of Horizon Airways employees, industry representatives, and media in the company's newly redesigned headquarters. What began as a response to discrimination has evolved into a comprehensive reimagining of how airlines operate and how passengers experience air travel. Behind her displays show the journey from incident to industry-wide change. The initial confrontation, the implementation of the Sky Equity Initiative, the spread of similar reforms throughout commercial aviation, the regulatory standards now being finalized based on the Horizon model. The metrics tell a compelling story, she continues. Complaints about discriminatory treatment across participating airlines have decreased by 87%. Passenger satisfaction has increased by 31%. Employee retention has improved by 28%. And perhaps most surprising to traditional industry thinking, profitability has increased by 17%, as operational efficiency and customer loyalty have improved. She gestures to Alexander Reynolds, who joins her at the podium. None of this would have been possible without leadership willing to embrace difficult truths and implement meaningful change. Reynolds addresses the audience with evident sincerity. "A year ago, I was focused on damage control, on containing a public relations crisis while preserving as much of the status quo as possible. Today, I'm grateful that Dr. Foster's vision prevailed over my initial caution. The transformation we've undergone hasn't just improved our metrics. It's created a company we can all be genuinely proud to work for." The ceremony continues with recognition of key contributors to the transformation process. Sophie Bennett and her training team, Melissa Turner, and her work on reformed verification procedures, the technical staff who developed the standardized service platforms, the frontline employees who provided crucial feedback during implementation. Dr. Foster observes this celebration with quiet satisfaction. The changes implemented have exceeded even her ambitious expectations, creating ripple effects throughout the industry and beyond. Other service sectors are beginning to adapt the Horizon model to their own contexts. Hotels, financial services, retail establishments, recognizing the operational benefits of consistent, respectful treatment for all customers. Most significantly, the cultural shift within Horizon Airways has taken root deeply enough to be self-sustaining. The initial resistance has given way to genuine embrace of the new approach, with staff at all levels recognizing and appreciating the benefits of operating within a system designed for equity rather than exclusion. Later that evening, at a smaller gathering for those most closely involved in the implementation process, Dr. Foster shares a more personal reflection. "A year ago, I experienced something that millions of people experience every day. The humiliation of being treated as if I didn't belong in a space I had every right to occupy. The difference was that I had the power to do something about it. Not just for myself, but for everyone who has ever been made to feel less than worthy of basic dignity and respect. She looks around the room at the faces of those who have contributed to the transformation. Faces diverse in age, race, gender, and background, united by commitment to a shared vision. What we've created together isn't just a better airline or a more efficient operation. It's a model for how organizations can evolve beyond discriminatory practices that harm both those subjected to them and those implementing them. It's proof that equal dignity isn't just a moral principle but a practical advantage. As the gathering continues, Dr. Foster finds a quiet moment to step away and call Jennifer Williams, who has been overseeing operations while she attends the anniversary events. "How did it go?" Jennifer asks. "Exactly as we hoped," Dr. Foster confirms. "The one-year metrics are compelling enough that 3 more airlines have committed to implementing the model. The FAA has finalized the new regulatory standards based on our framework. And perhaps most significantly, the cultural change within Horizon seems genuine and deeply rooted. Your father would be proud," Jennifer says softly. "He would," Dr. Foster agrees. "Not just of what we've accomplished, but of how we've accomplished it. Not through vengeance or punishment, but through transformation and growth." As she rejoins the celebration, Dr. Foster reflects on the true legacy of the past year. Not the policies changed or metrics improved, valuable as those are. Not the industry recognition or business success, gratifying as they might be. The true legacy lies in the experiences that won't happen, the humiliations that passengers won't endure, the dignity that won't be questioned, the belonging that won't be challenged. It lies in the young people like Amara who can pursue their dreams without artificial barriers, in the employees who can perform their duties without enforcing discriminatory practices, in the creation of space where everyone is treated with equal respect regardless of appearance or background. Sometimes Dr. Foster thinks, as she watches the diverse gathering of people who have made this transformation possible, the most powerful response to discrimination isn't loud protest, but quiet, strategic action that changes systems forever. That is the legacy that will endure. When they question your belonging, don't just earn your seat, change the room. Dr. Foster's words resonate with the group of young professionals gathered in Horizon's Mentorship Center. Diverse in background but united in ambition. These 20 participants represent the inaugural class of the Horizon Leadership Development Program, designed to create pathways to aviation careers for underrepresented groups. Among them sits Amara, now 13, the youngest ever recipient of Horizon's Future Aviator Scholarship. Her eyes shine with the same determination Dr. Foster had recognized a year earlier, now supported by structured opportunity and mentorship. As the session concludes, Dr. Foster watches from a discreet distance as a diverse flight crew boards one of Horizon's aircraft for an international route. Captain Javier Rodriguez leads the team, having accepted a position with Horizon 6 months earlier to help implement equity-focused leadership practices throughout flight operations. The transformation that began with humiliation in a first-class cabin has created ripples far beyond that single flight or single airline. It has demonstrated that treating people with consistent dignity isn't just morally right but operationally beneficial. It has proved that meaningful change is possible when courage meets strategy and principle meets persistence. Dr. Foster smiles as she turns away, heading toward her next meeting. The work continues as it always will, but the foundation has been built for something that will outlast any individual effort, a model of operation where dignity is not a privilege to be earned, but a right to be expected, where belonging is not questioned based on appearance or background, where the skies truly are open to all who wish to fly. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share it with others who might find it inspiring. Your support helps us bring more stories like this one to light. Stories of courage, transformation, and the power of strategic action in the face of injustice. Remember that each of us has the power to create change, whether through small daily acts of kindness or through bold visionary leadership. Together we can build a world where dignity and respect are the foundation of every interaction, not just in the skies, but everywhere we go.